Hey, this is Brum from Brum Gaming, and you're watching the 8-man Nightmare Mode walkthrough for Bonethrasher, the first encounter in Karagga's Palace. The first thing to note about this encounter is that Bonethrasher does not have an aggro table. He's not tankable, and he randomly targets people for his abilities. So, what you'll need to maximize on this fight is 6 DPS and 2 healers. It's fine if your normal tank swaps over to DPS gear or DPS spec for the duration of the fight. The arena that you fight Bonethrasher in is circular and has gas pits that surround the arena. If you fall into the gas pit, you will take damage over time and die very quickly. The arena also has 4 sets of 2 pillars in each corner. These 2 pillars have a gap between them which players can actually fall through. The pillars are pivotal to this strategy, and I'll explain more about that later. Bonethrasher has 4 primary abilities: Swipe, Backhand, Overhead Smash, and Pound. The fight has 3 notable mechanics to itself, which are the Palace Guard adds, the Manka Cat adds, and a hard 200% damage and rage. Bonethrasher executes one of his abilities every 6 seconds, using his backhand at random intervals, most often triggered when the next target he acquires is quickly found within his melee range, or if multiple people are within his melee range, including the target. Backhand will knock a player back, and in 1.1 patch, this distance was actually shortened. Backhand's biggest threat is not the damage it does, rather it's getting knocked back into the gas pit that surrounds the arena. In the event a player does get knocked back, it is possible for a Sage or Sork to pull them back up, if done very quickly. This actually happens one time during the video, and a Sage successfully pulls a player back into safety. Swipe is the boss's frontal cleave ability that will do damage to anyone in his path. Note that the boss will actually stop moving to cast this, so kiting is possible to avoid the damage. Overhead Smash is another ability that launches the raid into the air and back slightly from the initial position where they were standing while doing AoE damage. This is unavoidable. The last ability is Pound. He'll target one player, pound them into the ground, doing considerable damage and placing a slow on them. As far as positioning for the fight goes, we set up each of our 3 ranged DPS at their own pillar around the arena. This reduces the amount of time that they need to spend moving, while maximizing the distance the boss has to move between targets. Our melee follows behind, while our healers float in the middle to maintain healing distance on all players. You can use the target of target keybind to help determine who the boss is on during the course of the fight. It's far from perfect, but it does make a difference. Alright, now for the overall strategy. When the boss is on a player, that player will run to a pillar. If the boss is on one of the ranged DPS, they actually won't move from their assigned pillar. If it's on anyone else, they run to the open pillar that no one's assigned to. If you have more ranged DPS, the person assigned to any given pillar will need to move if a targeted player is running to that assigned pillar. In running to the pillar, the goal is to stand about 1 step from the edge. The player will then tank the damage from the swipes that the boss will use from that position. If you're set up correctly and the boss uses a backhand, you'll fly into the pillar, bounce off of it, and get knocked back into the arena, safely avoiding the gas pit. This is the most reliable way to avoid losing players to the knockback from the backhand while maximizing the damage that you do. It's critical to remember that when he does an overhead smash, if you're standing too close to the ledge, you'll get knocked into the gas pit due to the fact that the ability has you land slightly behind where you were thrown from in the air. In positioning yourself to get bounced off the pillar and tank the abilities, you'll need to play it like you were a tank and position the boss squarely between you and the pillar. And by that I mean it should actually be the boss, then you, then the pillar, all in one solid line. If you get into a situation where you can't avoid tanking him at an angle, then you need to run to an additional set of pillars, and you need to make sure that you let any of the ranged DPS assigned to that pillar know that you're coming. You can tank the boss by allowing him to run to you, then push up slightly into him, which will turn him squarely facing a pillar. When the boss is not on you, your job is to DPS or heal and stay away from the boss's face or any pillar you're not assigned to. Don't stand anywhere near the person who has aggro. During the course of the fight, he'll spawn an ad with a red beam that notes its position. DPS need to kill these immediately. Each one that spawned over the fight roughly has 6,000 hit points. If these don't die quickly, the boss will eat it and get a damage buff. If the boss does get this damage buff during the fight, it can actually be healed through, and you can kite the boss for the duration of the buff to avoid excess healing. At 50%, the boss spawns 2 Manka Cats with about 100,000 hit points, maybe a little bit more. Since this is a DPS heavy fight, we chain CC both of those ads with our sages. This gives us more time on the boss, rather than having to waste time killing the ads. If an ad does get loose, the players can use knockbacks or taunts to temporarily avoid excess damage. This fight and strategy takes some time to get accustomed to, and it's heavily dependent on players successfully getting bounced back from the pillars on a backhand. If you lose one player, the DPS or healing requirement for the fight will prevent you from actually killing the boss. If you do reach the hard enrage, you can still do additional damage while kiting the boss. You must shield people at full health to allow them to live through the AoE ground pound during the enrage. As you can see from the video, it is possible to kill him without hitting the enrage timer with this strategy, as again, the strategy is designed to maximize the damage that people can do through keeping as many people not moving as possible. Good luck!